everyone. Welcome to SPARC Hansraj's newest initiative, the 2022 Budget Analysis, where we'll be doing an in-depth analysis of this year's annual budget.
So today we have with us Mr. Manish Kumar Jha, Founder and Associate Editor of Foreign Affairs and Defense at BW Business World and BW Defense. Thanks for joining us here today, sir. We are very glad to have you with us.
Thank you. Good evening. I thank you for the opportunity. Hansraj College is one of the premier college University of Delhi, and thank you for the honor for the fact that I will be addressing younger students about very critical subject called defense budget, especially in the context of 2022-2023. But before I begin, start telling you about how important is defense budget, basically in overall scheme of union budget 2022-23. The defense budget is, of course, is something is not based on internal factors of the country. Of course, if you discuss about the economy, it's all globally linked phenomena, if you understand that. And so does defense, basically. So defense is thoroughly linked with the external situation, with the geopolitics. There's a term, if you guys understand, this is about how the politics of the world is changing. And when the politics of the world changing, so the economics also changes, basically. And then based on these two fundamentals, you focus on the defense budget of the country. And India is no different on that. In fact, India is an emerging nation in the world, is an emerging power. And what does defense budget do in this context, basically? So defense budget lets you build up capability for a nation. It could be India, it could be China, it could be Russia or United States. A capability to protect your country. When there is a situation, there will be war-like situation, there would be problem on your sovereignty, which is a political term of your country that would be free from any external threat, from any external environment, from any coercion, or from any form of any aggression from any other country. And that's how we form the defense budget. When I tell you, mind it, India has one of the staggering defense budget, and this year has been one of the highest defense budgets of all time, which is about 70 billion US dollar, which you convert in Indian rupee, if keeping the same values of US dollar at the moment now, I think it come across 5.25 lakh crores. And that is about 13% of the overall budget, That's a massive budget. But understand why we have such a staggering amount of budget for the defense, The argument is always that India is a growing country. We are a developing economy, We need infrastructure to be developed. We need our social sector to be developed. We have seen the COVID. We have seen also how the COVID infrastructure, the health infrastructure collapsed in India because we did not have the robust infrastructure in this country. Well, those are the vital issues of India. And of course, nobody argues that we need to spend greater amount of money in addressing these fundamental elements of the economy, health, education. It's nobody guess. But why defense? Because if you don't protect your country, if your sovereignty at stake, your existence is at stake. And so that's how you need to protect your country. That's how you need to have a robust, a strong defense budget. What does it do? So we have three wings. We have the Indian Army, Indian Air Force, and Indian Navy. These budgets are further bifurcated among these wings of Indian Armed Forces, what you call. And then we have a Ministry of Defense, which allocates these budgets to all these forces, which we call together as Indian Armed Forces. It also goes into the research and development in the defense, which we call the technology. If you don't have technology, we have to buy from outside. And so the defense budget is staggering. It has to go up. Why did it go up this time? So there is a 10% increase from last year. And why did it go? Nobody guessed. Fundamentally, we have seen how the geopolitics, as I say, had changed. We have seen how China had on our northern border, say Ladakh, has created so much of trouble for us. It's been pushing this aggressive agenda towards India. It's a hostile territory. It's a disputed territory, what we call LAC, line of actual control. We need to protect that area so Chinese do not come into. On the western side, we have Pakistan, which is always a sort of is getting into the failed state as a country. It promotes terrorism. It always pushes India towards instability through sending terrorists, encouraging terrorists. Names like Jaish-e-Mohammed, Al-Qaeda. And within India also, we have northeast border, which is also fragile because the border is very porous. We also have our army and forces there. So almost in entire India, we are surrounded by adversaries. They may not be adversaries today, and tomorrow, but need to prepare for the intention. And that's what defense budget is staggering $70 billion this year. Since it's interesting that this is Department of Commerce and there's no justification without giving you data. So it is important that you have to understand how it goes. So we divide. I just briefly tell you, the defense budget is divided into major 5 components. First is called capital expenditure, and capital expenditure is a very important part of defense budget. It is the expenditure which decides what we can buy, how much we can buy, and what we need to buy. So any equipment, military armament, anything which is about modernizing our armed forces is done through capital expenditure. So this is the most important aspect of defense budget. Though this is the least of the defense budget, I tell you how. Now, capital expenditure is for this year is $20 billion. So what does it mean? So we have a $20 billion for Indian Army, Indian Air Force, and Indian Navy, and also includes, as I say, research and development. So we have an agency called DRDO, it's the Defense Research Organization, it's the sole research body of India, which conducts staggering amount of research. So overall, the capital expenditure will go into buying new equipment for the Indian Armed Forces. Next is the revenue expenditure, which is about 31.7 lakh crore, and in billion, sorry, it is about 31.7 billion. And it goes into the maintaining the salary part, the operational part of Indian Armed Forces. And third part is a defense pension. You have to understand that defense is a humongous, is the biggest employer after railway. There are 13 lakh people working there. So you can understand that people who retire need pension, basically. So we have short service commission, we have a long tenure, and they all need to be paid. That is called pension. So that takes the largest chunk of defense budget. This is to be noted. So how much it takes, you would be, it's about 15 point, it's almost like $16 billion. So $16 billion each year goes into the pension. The defense veteran, those who have retired, they get the money. And that is actually a 32, it's a staggering percentage, they consume. So total defense budget this year is 7.2 billion. 70.02 billion US dollar, and in Indian rupees, which we call 5.2 lakh crore. So it's a 10% increase. We further bifurcate. The Indian Army get 4.27 billion, which is about 21.0% increase from last year. Navy gets 6.35 billion US dollar, which is about 31.23% increase from last year. And Indian Air Force gets 7.41 billion US dollar, which is about 11.27% from the last year. So overall, the total capital, as I said, $20 billion, which is actually part of Indian Armed Forces. Why is it actual part? Because this is a part where we can modernize, buy equipment, buy other, what you call the Rafale, the defense systems and all that. And that's how we build up the capability. So this is overall situation of defense budget. This is a long process, which is done by Ministry of Defense. There are dedicated wings there. And how it is done, it's of course is a long debate which will not fulfill and justify this short, how we reach, what are the factors responsible for. For rest of now, I'll open the session for you guys to, if you have anything, just you're most welcome to throw your question on me. It could be anything from the foreign affairs, it could be defense, because these are the two linked subjects. Foreign affairs, international affairs, what is happening around the world, how does it impact India, and then how does we build up our defense budget based on such factors. So when we discuss defense budget, it's about the global geopolitical and geoeconomic situation we're talking about. So please, I welcome you guys all. And anything, floor is yours, please.
Thank you, sir. This was really very informative. We have got a few questions for you. So the finance minister has announced that 25% of the defense funds would be earmarked for the private sector, startups, and academia. So this was a very long-awaited reform. So what do you think would be its impact on the Make in India initiative?
A wonderful question. I think it's very fundamental things we have touched on. So, and this is actually the highlight of this budget, that government has focused first time on the research and development in the defense area. So India is still the second largest importer of the defense arms in the world. As a commerce student, you understand what does it mean to us as a taxpayer. As a taxpayer, we are buying military equipment from around the world, in US dollar. So we pay huge amount to buy such equipment. Why? Because our country does not produce that. Our country does not make that. Because we don't have that capability. We don't have that research and development capability. Neither we have focus so far. We have focused, a couple of key elements, but in a staggering way, our requirement is so huge because country is so large and our threats are so wider that we have no choice. We have to buy latest equipment so that our Army, Air Force, and Navy do raiding when there's a threat happens there. And when I say threat happens, look at the history. If you see, India has fought so many wars. India has fought war in 1971, 1965. We had a Kargil war. We are having actually a quasi war situation at our border. It's almost like a war. Of course, we have not fired a shot. But the situation is a war-like situation. We have the military from both sides facing each other. It's a staggering amount of military. It's a battalion after battalion. It's 50 to 1 lakh army personnel are employed from both sides. So what does it mean? It means actual deployment of army, air force, and navy. And that's how, to mitigate, we need to develop our capability own by own. And so defense used to be, of course, based on the import, largely based on the import. We have been buying from many countries, fighter jets, missile systems, naval systems. That has to change because that is just not sustainable at all. We just cannot use our taxpayer money to buy the foreign equipment, because what happened when you buy a foreign equipment, first you buy in US dollars, and when you buy, the cost of research is included. So, for example, when you buy a Rafale from France, which, if you're aware, you've been buying 36 Rafales from France, right? It's about it's almost €7 billion. 7 euro billion euro. So you know how much money, if you calculate in INR, it's a staggering amount of money. Could not this money go into the health sector? Could not we use such staggering money in the education, right? Could not make it build a better infrastructure in the Hansraj College for the next generation to fit in there, right? Could not make one of the stadium in the DU, right? Which we can produce Olympic champion. So we have to put that money buying that Rafale outside because we did not produce that, because we did not do proper research. We did not. So fundamentally, what I'm trying to tell you, as you asked me, government recognize this, and government say 25% of the overall budget we would be putting the research budget I'm talking about. It's not overall defense budget. We would be putting in research and development. The important aspect is that, as I said, in India there is only one body that does the overall research. That's again, it's called DRDO. And that system somehow is not working because you need to involve private sector. You need to involve because India is open market. We know what is socialist state control market. So the ideas and research has to flow in from all quarters. It has to flow in from foreign country. It has to flow in from private players. It has to flow in from startup. So government has recognized this and said, okay, 25% will just not dedicate to DRDO, which is a government agency. Okay, it is not a private sector agency, but government will also contribute and give fund to the private sector to start up. If you're a brilliant mind like yours, if you come up with any solution for the defense, you go and ask Defense Ministry, oh look, I have this system in my mind. Would you sponsor? I would need to develop rocket system. I need to develop. So this is a 25% budget government has talked about. It is still not a staggering amount. It comes to about 11,000 crore, if I just recall out of my whole data understanding. Just 11,000 crore. But the recognition is important that government has finally recognized. They use the word R&D as a scale in the union budget speech by Nirmala Sitharaman, who is the finance minister, that we need to devote that amount of money. Equally, in the government, in the private sector, in the startup, let's all meet, let's all discuss, let's develop capability within India so that we don't have to buy arms from outside and we build up our capability in this country. So this is a welcome step. Having said that, it's still not much amount. It needs to be encouraged, it needs to be added, but still the very idea that we have started debating that until unless we don't develop our R&D capability in this country, until unless we don't debate, we don't focus, rest is not, rest is all, is difficult. We will continue importing from overseas. Yes, I hope I've answered, your question. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you. That was a very thorough breakdown of the question. So India cut development aid to Taliban-ruled Afghanistan by 43% in this budget. What impact do you think will it have on India-Afghanistan relations in the future?
Okay, so it's interesting. So you put the foreign affairs and the defense, not directly linked to this, but I try to explain the perspective. Of course, Afghanistan is an important country. We do not share direct border with Afghanistan, but we have overall a historical relation with Afghanistan. It's country just next to bordering Pakistan, and then you understand how it is important. And it has been a fragile country for many decades. Afghanistan has been a pawn by many countries. It has been an area of conflict since the beginning of the Cold War, and it has been witnessing major wars recently until the US troop has withdrawn. And finally, what happened? Taliban has taken over. So having said that, India has a foreign policy is based on a development goal. So India's foreign policy says when we reach out to the countries where they need development, we will fund their projects, but we'll fund them so they can sustain it. It's not about debt financing, what you understand in the commerce language. So we'll finance it in a way they will sustain it, and India hands over such project to Afghanistan in a way that garners our goodwill as a country, builds a great relation with that country, and it is very important to do in today's world that you have great relation with these countries because these are the extended neighborhood, what we call with India, and it's important to keep peace and stability in the region. And that is how India has been granting some about 3 to 4 billion US dollar in terms of the trade to Taliban. Now, there is a new dimension, which Taliban has been a terrorist declared organization, not by India, but by the United Nations. So that's a declared terrorist organization, basically. So India does not recognize that government still now. Okay, though India does talk what we call de facto discussion. If you understand, these two legal words, de facto and de jure. So India recognizes de facto, not the recognition of the government, but recognition of the country and the people. So we continue having a development relation, we continue having aid. But since we do not recognize the government as a full, we do not know their plan, because we have seen historically in the past, their approach towards women, their approach towards some of the modern elements of society have been quite lackluster. And there's a fear that they will come back to the same mode of rule and regulation, which is not modern, which is not democratic, which is very, I would call it barbarian in the nature. So Indian government is holding some of their investment because they don't know the investment will go into the right hand. So if you're building a bridge in Afghanistan, in some part of Afghanistan, the western part of Afghanistan, it has to go in building the bridge, right? But if you don't recognize the government, and government, you have to wait and watch and see how government evolves. Does it fulfill its promise as a genuine, responsible government of the day, which it builds up relation, diplomatic relation, it maintains laws, international laws, and by the time it happens, government will have no choice. And no, it's not Indian government exception. It's all the government is doing, except one or two government, except China, maybe. That government is holding some of their aid to Taliban. And having said that, it's not the whole amount, it's a certain portion that, because India recently, if you know that, has been sending wheat through Pakistan to Afghanistan, because there's so much of war happened, there's so much of crisis, people should not die. So as a government, we recognize this. Now, how does it impact defense? It's actually a very fundamental question, because Afghanistan problem is related to terrorism. The base of the Al Qaeda was in Afghanistan. The Osama bin Laden was killed in Afghanistan. It's not a radical. It does not have to be any religion, but what we call the radical, the fundamentalist. So Afghanistan, because it has been in the region of conflict such a long time, it has a wider setup of those radicals, and so there's a chances always that those radical being misused by Pakistan, whose political theory is totally based against India. So, and they would push and they would try everything to destabilize the Indian border, sending more terrorists to Jammu and Kashmir and to the western border, instigating violence in parts of India. And of course, for that, we need to maintain our forces and how we can impact defense budget. Yes, we have to build up capability. How does it impact? For example, when we put our forces in Ladakh, we have to have guns, not the guns in hand. We have to have mountain guns. So that we can carry those mountain guns up to the high altitude. We have to have fighter jets there. So something would happen, those fighter jets will scramble and go up in the sky and show our adversaries, look, we are ready to attack if you cross our line of control or if you cross our aerial area, and so does the Navy. So it's a simple equation. So we need, because in such a situation, danger is high, threat is always high. So we need to have a high alert, and to have a high alert, we need to have better capability, better arms, and of course, it does impact budget, and that is how our budget was $64 billion last year, and then you see it has $70 billion. So this is how, as a good question, and that's example is that this is how the external factor impact our budget. This is how government has no choice. Government had to increase budget so we can have better capability. The army forces, the defense forces are employed there are better equipped to fight. They have the better dress. They have the better armament to protect themselves from such a harsh terrain. So these are the elements that define the budget overall in the context of a geopolitical situation, something like Afghanistan we talked about.
Thank you, sir. That was very enlightening. The next question would be, so could you please briefly explain about the various measures taken in this year's annual budget to encourage foreign investors and multinationals to invest in India?
Okay, so that goes beyond the defense part. Basically, it is a wider. The country has, larger debate in the country has always been about attracting investors. And why so? Because more investment happen in India, we get more capital, what you call in the commerce term. And what do we use for capital? To build up infrastructure. And the simple answer, with more build up infrastructure, economy will move. It's all about the logistics. Economy will move more, economy will move, economy will grow much, much more. So fundamentally, every budget, the idea of every budget is that how we can push the growth. And sadly, there are external factors again. For example, the COVID for the last 2.5 years has been sort of making into the budget. Because government had never planned such a urgency for the situation like COVID. So for the last 2-year budget and coming down to this point, what government first wanted to do to keep the fiscal balance right. So and it's very important. If you don't have any big idea, okay, it is okay, it is a good, but don't damage the economy as well. So fundamentally, that's what government has been doing in this budget also. So number one aspect of this budget, if you talk about the growth perspective, is that government has kept the fiscal low. So what does it mean by that? So government has not tried to come up with some new scheme, formulas, populist measure. What you expect is a part of political economy, if you know that. What political party does, they don't care what we have. They don't care what expenditure we have, how much we have earned, right? And that's what we need to have the scheme. So government has not done that, at least in this budget, the last budget. So government has maintained that sort of sanity and extended the same schemes, for example, for the farmers, for the rural economy, for the health, largely across the domain, even for the matter, MNREGA, all sort of welfare schemes are largely the same, and which is largely a good idea, because if you don't have a big bang idea, government try to be on the balanced path. In terms of the investor, and that's how it's important. What global investors look for, they look for number one, the stability. They look for stability in your policies, whether it is high tax, whether it is ease of doing business. So these factors are important to attract more global investors who will come, who will have a confidence in India. Look, if I'm going to invest this much money, I'm going to invest a company in India. Tomorrow, the laws because what they build up, ultimately, what they invest is based on the existing law, right? So they fear that tomorrow, if something changes, their investment, their thought process, on the basis they put their money in India would be in jeopardy, right? So fundamentally, number one, to attract investors, government has maintained that stability. Now, this is largely for the fact that India is now most stable country in the world in the post-COVID scenario. We have sustained a growth path, and that budget tried to achieve that sort of thing. In terms of export is important for the growth. So government has come up with a production linked scheme. Actually, it is based on the understanding that since 1991, the country is growing based on the domestic consumption. What we have is a large country. So our economy is large enough to sustain and grow, right? You understand what I'm trying to tell you. Now that story is finished. Okay, what we need to grow further, we need to export, add more value to our product, add more value to our economy, and that's what we get more capital. And that's how economy will grow. So government has tried to do encouraging export by bringing production linked scheme, streamlining few customs rule. Government has focused a lot on infrastructure, and also in defense. Government has laid out 2 big defense corridor where they want all the big multinational companies to come in and invest in India, create jobs. I don't know how much it will succeed, but there are few majors like this production links. If I highlight, is one of the success story of the government. The rest remains to be seen. So this I can overall in terms of investment I can highlight basically.
So coming to the last question. Last year, the Ministry of External Affairs had proudly noted that the ministry had got the highest ever allocation, that is of rupees 18,154.73 crore. So as per the latest budget documents, it got revised to 16,000 crore for 2021 and 2022. So this was a drop of 11.8%. So not only that, there has also been a sharp decrease of 5% in the expenditure allocation for the new financial year of 2022-23 at 17,250 crore. So why do you think this decision was taken?
Sorry, initially your voice was broken. So I think you're talking about the overall union budget, right?
Yeah, sir.
Okay, we have to start again because your voice was breaking. That's a problem, I guess. Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, now
Yeah,
better.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, this is repeating.
Yeah. So last year, the Ministry of External Affairs had proudly noted that the ministry had got the highest ever allocation, that is of rupees 18,154.73 crore. So as per the latest budget documents, it got revised to 16,000 crore for budget of 2021-2022. So this was a drop of 11.8%. And not only that, there has been a sharp decrease of 5% in the investment expenditure allocation for the new financial year, that is 2022-2023. So why do you think such a decision was taken?
Okay, so this is specific to the Ministry of External Affairs, right? I think the figures we have given basically, honestly, is not on top of my mind. But for me, MEA does excellent job. MEA has a very wider reach. In fact, our economic policies, specific in the context of export, is led by the Ministry of External Affairs, largely through the embassies across the world. And they are the one who sort of facilitate our export growth in other countries. And so it's largely attached to our economic outlook worldwide. So it'd be ironic that government has reduced certain percentage in the MEA budget. It could be perhaps the result of adding more value to the defense based on the expenditure we have received. I think this would be largely based on such premise that you have to cut somewhere to add somewhere. Ultimately, what MEA does, MEA is more of a who builds up India's overarching foreign policy, sets direction for our economic threat to outside world. But knowing the threat at the Indian border, knowing that we have so much of we need so many equipment, we need to modernize our forces, and so there's if you see, there's almost like a 10% increase from last year defense budget to this year. So that 10% has to be adjusted. I think MEA took that punch perhaps, and 5% is being adjusted to MEA. I think largely this could be the reason for doing so. Based on the as I said again, it's a smart move because that again, government try to keep the fiscal balance. You can take you can have many debts. You can ask for World Bank. Okay, our forest reserve is fundamentally very fine. We are coming close to $500 billion. It's a wonderful state of the foreign reserve. Mind it does not correlate with the growth of Indian economy. These are two separate stuff. Can't relate directly. But yes, it's one of the major indications that our economy is stable. We will never have balance of the payment problem because we have a huge corpus at the moment now. But still, government did not try to borrow because we tried to maintain the fiscal deficit below 6%. That's our aim. And by doing so, you have to cut and add somewhere. Where would you go? You cannot cut in defense. You cannot cut in health. You have seen the COVID disaster. Our public health infrastructure is still at very nascent stage across India, many parts of India. We need to have more money in education and R&D, which we pointed out. Ultimately, if you don't spend money on R&D, so Ministry of External Affairs must have taken some punch out of that, and they did it. I hope it will be next year back to the better allocation. That's what I can talk about.
Yes, sir. So with that, we come to the end of our session. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. It was a very informative session. I'm sure a lot of people watching the audience have learned a lot more about the defense budget, maybe things they didn't consider previously. Thank you so much again for joining us, sir.
Thank
And
you
the
very
audience,
much.
thank you.
Thank you. I see you guys. Best of luck. Keep reading. Keep knowing what is happening around the world, and keep reading your defense budget as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.